Hello everyone and welcome back to Victorians Exposed. Now, Charles Dickens is one of the most famous authors of the 19th century, and perhaps Dickens' most famous novel is A Christmas Carol, which is also one of the most iconic ghost stories of all time. But what some people don't know is that the ghost story actually evolved as a subgenre of the short story. And one of the more interesting short ghost stories that Dickens wrote was The Signalman, which was published in the Christmas of 1866. In the story, an unnamed narrator meets a signalman who is being haunted by a recurring apparition. Every time he sees the spectre, a tragedy soon follows involving the tunnel where he works. At the time when the narrator meets the signalman, 2 tragedies have already occurred and the signalman is sure that a third is soon to follow. In the third warning, the ghost is shouting, "Hello, below there, for God's sake clear the way," and the signalman has no idea what it means or how he can prevent the upcoming tragedy. The narrator is sceptical and thinks that the signalman is hallucinating and offers to take him to a doctor. The signalman refuses, so the narrator says that he'll come and visit again tomorrow. But when the narrator returns the next day, he sees a figure in the mouth of the tunnel, in the exact spot where the signalman says that he saw the ghost. But the figure was only an official investigating an accident which happened a few hours earlier, where the signalman was hit by an oncoming train and killed instantly. The narrator asks the driver what happened, and we learn that the signalman was investigating something inside the tunnel and was unaware of the approaching train. The driver tries to warn the signalman and cries out, "Hello, below there, for God's sake clear the way," but the signalman doesn't hear these warnings and is hit by the oncoming train. It appears that the final apparition was a warning of the signalman's own death, and the narrator is left to contemplate what has happened in his own scepticism. Now, trains were a very interesting topic to Victorian readers due to the fact that they were still a relatively new invention. And the first disaster in The Signalman is actually based on the Clayton Tunnel disaster which happened in 1861. In this accident, 3 trains were travelling very close together on the same track. The signalman at the entrance of the tunnel was trying to get the second train to back out as he thought the first hadn't yet left it. Due to a signalling error sent from the tunnel's exit, the signalman thought that both trains had now successfully left the tunnel. But unfortunately, only the first train had left, and the signalman sent the third into the tunnel whilst the second was still trying to back out. The crash caused many deaths and even more injuries, and the whole event brought into question a lot of issues surrounding the railway. Given the fact that the trains all left within just a few minutes of each other, and the signalman had been working a 24-hour shift, many thought the crash could have easily been avoided. Unfortunately, crashes like these were not uncommon, and Dickens was involved in a train crash which happened in 1865, only 1 year before the publication of The Signalman. The Staplehurst rail crash was another accident caused by the errors of signalmen. In this case, a train was derailed whilst travelling over an aqueduct, as several parts of the tracks had been removed due to engineering works. A signalman was in place with a red flag to warn the driver of the upcoming danger, but unfortunately he was placed too close to the rail works and the driver did not have enough time to stop. Dickens was travelling on the train with his mistress Ellen Ternan and her mother. When the carriage derailed, Dickens valiantly rescued Ellen and her mother and several other passengers who were trapped on the train. He tended to many of the wounded and some of them even died while he was with them. Before leaving the scene, he even climbed back into the carriage to retrieve the manuscript of Our Mutual Friend, the novel that he was working on at the time. From this point onwards, Dickens was always nervous when travelling on trains, and after he died 5 years to the day after the accident, his son said that he had never fully recovered from the crash. But perhaps fittingly, the association of Dickens with ghosts didn't end after his death. When Dickens died, he was halfway through writing The Mystery of Edwin Drood, and no one knew how it ended. But in 1872, American printer Thomas Power James said that he had been contacted by Dickens' ghosts saying that he wanted to finish the novel. When he was under a trance, James would engage in automatic writing, and he began producing the ending to the novel. But whilst the handwriting that he produced wasn't his own, it definitely wasn't Dickens's either. Unsurprisingly, many people were sceptical about the entire thing, but when James began to get disheartened, Dickens would write him notes sending encouragements and saying that other spirits would soon be contacting mediums to write more of their own books. The novel was published about a year after James started writing it, and immediately became a bestseller in America. But back in the UK, people weren't quite so convinced. However, Arthur Conan Doyle, who was most famous for writing the Sherlock series, was an avid spiritualist and praised the novel as genuine. But regardless of these endorsements, the book never reached the same fame in the UK than it did in America, but you can still purchase the novel with James's ending today. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to watch the last episode of Victorians Exposed, and if you want to get even more content, just click subscribe. We'll see you next time.